We'd like to begin by thanking our panelists for taking the time to do this today. We're really honored to have with us directors of different types of programs that blend formal and informal education. I'd like to introduce Hannah Spiegelman, the Rosh Hashanah.
Friendly face.
I would like to introduce our Moshe Benevitz, who is the director of the Yeshivat Hakotel. We also have formal position in Israel throughout the year, but we invited them particularly because of the programs they run that involve both formal and informal education, which is part of what the leadership program is addressing. And we're also hopefully at some point going to have Rabbi Gach Yudin here, who is the Rosh Hashiva of the Yeshiva that blends learning Torah with sports and other kinds of activities. He brings his own unique perspective to things. In the meantime, I'll join the panel until Rabbi Yudin is here. So soon we'll have our Dan. We'll moderate a bit of the what's going on. First of all, I'd like to present each of our panelists with a safer gift from the yeshiva, which I think is on the table here. Right?
Someone took it.
Let's take a minute and thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
We'd like to begin by asking each of the program directors to take 5 minutes to explain the significance of their form of education and their personal story of how they became involved in it. After those 5 minutes, there's a list of questions that you guys submitted, 8 questions that we're going to ask each of the panelists to speak about. If anyone has a pressing, dire question in the course of the discussion that they'd like to add, they can give the questions to Rav Cutler. We want to have the questions in print so the panelists have a chance to review them, have a chance to collect the thoughts. But if there's some really special additional question, maybe we'll have addendum. So let's start. I guess we're going in alphabetical order. Let's go Benevitz to begin with his 5 minutes statement about it. You can have whatever you want, then we'll have.
He's be in bed.
Okay, please.
Okay, it's first of all, it's great to have the opportunity to be here and to participate in a program like this. I have enormous respect for the learning that goes on in this incredible Makom Torah. I often have the opportunity to stop by and just to marvel at what's going on in the Beis Medrash and to spend a few minutes learning with so many good chaverim that we know from other places and other opportunities to interact, and people who will yet to know and get to know through the course of the learning here. I do think it's justified to take a few minutes from the incredibly important learning schedule to speak about issues like the ones that are presented tonight, the types of questions that we'll be dealing with. I have to say that my main motivation for being here is to hear the answer to the questions that my co-panelists will be providing. I'm excited to hear what they have to say and to learn from them, as I'm sure you are also. But that is that's far and away the great opportunity as far as I'm concerned that I'll have. So I'll join you in listening to their responses and what they have to say. As was mentioned by Rav Tarragon, my association with NCSY, with the NCSY Summer Kollel, I guess is what brought me here tonight. It's an organization that I've been involved with for over 20 years, both in terms of greater NCSY and particularly with NCSY Kollel. I guess what's unique about the NCSY Kollel, and I don't mean completely unique because I think there are other programs that do this, but anytime you're talking about informal education, much like when you're speaking about modern orthodoxy, there's a question about where the dagesh and where the emphasis lies, informal or education. There are certain programs in certain places which place a greater emphasis, and no two programs are going to be exactly the same, but whether the emphasis is on the informal, sometimes for very, very good and appropriate reasons, or whether the emphasis is going to be on education. Sometimes in our eager pursuit of the informal, which we have a more natural inclination to, and there are many, many great reasons and many great benefits of being involved in something less formal, we lose sight of the education. And what goes on specifically in the NCSY Summer Kollel and in many NCSY programs in general is to try to make sure that that focus on the education isn't lost, and hopefully over the course of the evening we'll have an opportunity to talk about exactly how we try to do that and how we try to sharpen that focus on education without losing any of the benefits and any of the advantages of it being informal. In terms of my own personal involvement, so I guess I would start, it's a good place to start, because my personal involvement is not a dramatic story, and There are all sorts of anecdotal tidbits that we could put into it, and like I said, maybe they'll come up a little bit later. But the real reason my involvement with it is because of my involvement on the other side of it. I was greatly influenced by a network of informal educators in my youth. Growing up in Teaneck, New Jersey, starting with junior congregation minyanim and youth minyanim, including my involvement with NCSY as an NCSYer, advisors such as Rabbi Yudin, who just walked in right now. And I remember listening to sessions that he gave when I was in high school in New Jersey, NCSY, and real being great influence. I was privileged to have a very, very solid yeshiva education growing up, and yet I learned as much from my informal opportunities as I did from the formal ones, and that wasn't for a lack of learning from the formal ones. I was privileged to spend many a summer in different camp settings. Later on in high school, I was in Yeshivat Hakotel for a while. I learned a lot about Hasmad and intensity of learning from a couple of chavrusas who sat at the table next to me, who learned with enormous intensity. Rabbi Bednarsh, who's now working in the Grus Kollel, and another guy who spent a lot of the summer debating how to balance his passion for hockey and his being solicited by the Morashah staff team to play hockey and his Sidarim. That was Rabbi Ruvain Tarragon, who was sitting at the table next to me. So the answer of how I got here and how I got involved was being influenced by some of the people who coincidentally are in this room right now, and seeing that power. I knew it for myself, and therefore I knew it was something I wanted to get involved in. And ultimately, that's the way it works. That's the way it works. If you haven't experienced the power of informal education, then there's nothing that you're going to hear on a panel that's going to inspire you or excite you to get involved. But all of us have experienced it. We've all benefited from the power of informal education, and that's the first step to being great informal educators, to take those experiences and to try to pass them on a little bit.
Okay, thank you very much for my hockey background. 2 points from the judges.
Wow. Wow. Okay, listen, guys, I'm really much more informal than I am formal. Like, that's just to begin with. I run a summer camp. It's called Camp Moshavai Indian Orchard. It's a camp that is geared towards children who have finished the 3rd grade all the way up through the 9th grade, and then they move on to the other programs that Bnei Akiva North America provides, like Rav Dan knows, Machach Arts and other programs like that. But part of what I do and part of what I love is I work with the kids when they come in on the ground level, and then we slowly work our way up. That's what I do. That's the informal education and the background that I come from. I grew up in this particular machaneh. I grew up in Moshavai Indian Orchard. I grew up in Bnei Akiva as a whole. It has given me definitely 100%. It has given me my inspiration. It has definitely guided me in terms of the choices that I've made in terms of my life, where to live, how to raise my family, what to do with my career, my professional career. I'm a guidance counselor. I work in a yeshiva boys high school, Israeli high school here in Israel. I'm passionate about what I do. And I find that informal education, especially in a place like Israel, because informal education goes hand in hand with education in general in Israel, I have 2 great, incredible, wonderful privileges and opportunities. During the year, I get to work with Israeli boys, and I work in a fabulous school, and I deal with the more informal part of their education, and then in the summer, I get to help really inspire, I hope, inspire young minds from a young age, and then as they go up to being staff in Camp Moshavah. I can talk to you about what I know. I can talk to you about the things that I have done. I can talk to you about the place where I work. Moshavah, I tell my staff all the time, Moshavah is like magic. That's what it's like. It's just like magic. And when anybody has ever experienced what magic is, real magic, and I'm not talking about pulling a rabbit out of somebody's hat. I'm just talking about an experience that has been so pivotable in your life, okay? Pivotal, that's the word. Sorry. Informal, all right. Pivotal in your life. Then you know what I'm talking about when I talk about magic. For people to come in and absolutely have the opportunity to experience some educational value or an educational idea and experience it. Not just learn it, not just read it from a book, not just see it on a piece of paper, but actually experience it. Feel like they're there, feel like they've walked through it, feel like they can touch it, feel like it's something that's tangible to their life. That's informal education. And that makes it something that they tuck away and they take with them afterwards. That's my ani ma'amin. That's what I believe. I believe if I do a good job at inspiring the people that are around me, and I work with some unbelievable people, unbelievable upper staff, incredible younger staff, if I feel like I can inspire them and they continue to inspire me, then I think that I'm doing a good job. And the end results are when I look around the room and I look at some of the boys who have graduated Moshava in terms of their being campers in Moshava and Chanichim there, and I look at who they are today and the choices that they've made, then I think we did a pretty good job. So for me, that makes the informal educational experience something that is invaluable. Now, I wouldn't be who I am today if it wasn't for that particular experience. I came to Camp Moshava when I was 13 or 14 years old. I just finished the 8th grade, and just finished the 8th grade. And my parents had actually plucked me right out of where I was going to school. I lived in America in a really nice place called Monsey, New York, and at the end of my 7th grade, my parents said, okay, guess what, we're moving to Israel. I thought that they really ruined my life. That's what I did. They ruined my life, and in fact, it took me a very, very long time to get past it. And it was just by some fluke. I'm not going to go into the whole story. Magical moment in Camp Moshava. By fluke, I got sent to Camp Moshava one summer, and I listened and listened for the first almost 3 weeks to what everybody was talking about, and I thought to myself, I did not understand really what they were talking about. I thought that they and I had been living or had experienced two different kinds of Israels. I was living in the one that was terrible and horrible for me, and they were living in this really great Disney World place. And then I started listening with a different ear, and I started experiencing what they were trying to say. And when I did that, everything in my life turned around completely, 180 degrees, completely turned around. And from that moment, everything in my life continues to turn around. And I continue, I hope, to be guided by what I was brought up with in terms of my informal education, my passion and my love, and I hope I do it okay, you know? That's informal education. For me, it comes from my heart, and I hope I bring it to everybody else who's around me. That's it. Gotcha, it's you.
Now, Rabbi Yudin is arrived. I want to thank him for coming.
Pleasure.
And giving me the opportunity to take 5 minutes to explain the significance of his form of education's personal story. But I also want to thank Rabbi Cutler, who put together today's program. And
Being that it's informal, I'm going to take off my sweatshirt, and it's all good. And
Sure.
it was a long run from Amelia. I apologize for being a little tardy. And yeah, so I just, as we were sitting in, a little bit of thought that I tried to give to some of the questions that were presented to us earlier, in particular this introduction. I'm 47 years young, and I've been blessed in my life when I was, trying to figure out, formal and informal education. I, Baruch Hashem, was blessed to grow up in a home. Nothing to do with me, but you can't pick your parents. That's you can't pick where you're born. But I was blessed to grow up in a home of formal educators who, during the day, are in various in yeshiva. My dad, and I was also brought up in a home where my house was a place of informal education from the time I was a very little child. And even though there's clearly a fine line between formal and informal, there's clearly an unbelievable overlap, because at the end of the day, economic formal education and sitting in a classroom, but there's life, and Torah is Eitz Chaimi. Torah is your life, and there's obviously what you formally learn, and it's also what you put into practice. So I was very privileged to grow up in a home of tremendous informal education in terms of outreach, in terms of chesed, in terms of reaching out to people, and that's the home that I grew up in. So that was an aspect of chesed in my life. And I am 47 years young. Out of 47 years of my life, 45 years I've spent in a summer camp. So some people never grow up, and that's not a bad thing. And even the 2 summers that I didn't, I was honeymooning with my wife one summer, so I was entitled, and I don't know, the other summer I was like 1 year old, because like from the time I was 2, so my dad and mom were rabbis and the camp rabbis of a camp, so ever since I was 3, and then I can name you literally the camps of my life that I've been privileged, and the summer programs and the informal educational programs that I've had the privilege to be a part in. So that's a component of my life. I was also, as Rabbi Benovitz mentioned, I was very, very blessed. We grew up in a very, very special time in a place in New Jersey, NCSY, which was an unbelievably special component of my life. And I have unbelievable childhood, teenage memories of going to bed at night, and before I went to bed at night, calling a boy from Lakewood, New Jersey, who, you know, did not come from any type of religious, not the Lakewood, not that Lakewood, New Jersey. No, it's you know, and to literally get on the phone and say Shema, Shema, Yisrael, Yisrael, you know, and to say Shema with kids from, you know, from public school backgrounds, and to work with kids with public school backgrounds, and to have Shabbatonim, and to have explanatory minyanim, and to be a part of that as a teenager first, and then, you know, as I continued in my life to be involved more on a formal level. But then, thank God, there was always camp in the summer, so it became informal, and even in school sometimes there are formal rebbeim, there are sometimes informal rebbeim, and I was one of them, maybe in the formal part of life. And then I've been zocha now at the moment to start yeshiva, and that's why things are a little bit, you know, and you could, then I don't see them as, you know, this is they really could go hand in hand. They really are biyachad as one. And the yeshiva that I'm privileged to be a part of at the moment, so we're a yeshiva that actually joins together formal education, and Baruch Hashem, boys are learning every single day, a half a day, but we also take that education whilst they're having the formal education. There's a lot of informal, and boys are involved in chesed 3 afternoons a week, and boys are, so in other words, even in my professional life now, my formal, I'm actually involved in a lot of informal. So that's what brings me here, and I'm happy, honored to be a part of trying to help you guys focus on what you could do with your lives as well.
Before proceeding to the questions, I'd just like to mention on a personal level, Baruch Hashem, as many speakers said, the staff here in Yeshivat Hakotel is very much connected to these 3 speakers. Remember, Rabbi Benovitz as a father, got you giving me directions when I got lost on the way to English Town, Shabbaton. Funny purpose kid, firm, and Baruch Hashem had a great split of experiencing and seeing the wonderful work of Hans Spiegelman, who's really opened my eyes to a lot of things about chiddush that boys in Yeshivat Hakotel benefit from. And Rav Horn mentioned to me today that he became the religious person he is through the NCSY work. People like Rabbi Yuhu was a Rebbe in Hillel, and then he spent time with Yom Shabbat, the TBI counselor. He also spent years in NCSY College and now teaches there. So we as an institution all lots of people on the stage here, and we hope that we'll be able to continue learning not only our Talmidim but our staff and the special people we have here on stage. Without further ado, the questions we put together from you, and thank you again to for editing. A big question for many yeshiva boys is what to do with their summer. Should they focus on continuing their learning or other aspects of personal growth, or should they focus on giving back to their community? What are your thoughts on the topic? In order, or you can speak up?
Okay, I want to start. Listen, guys, learning Torah is probably the most essential thing that you'll ever do in your whole life. That's what it is. Torah is at the emtza, the basis, the foundation and the center of everything you're going to do in your lives from now, and I hope forever. That's what it is. Torah is all of it. Now the question is, what do we do with our Torah? Do we just keep learning Torah, just to ourselves and by ourselves, or do we spread the wealth? And when you're talking about summer camp, and I'm talking about young kids, and I'm talking about young North American kids who need good role models and great leadership, then the best place we got to come looking for is in yeshivot, such as yourselves and all the other yeshivot that provide these great and wonderful young educators and leaders. So, One sometimes makes the mistake and thinks that when you go to summer camp, you put your Torah aside because everything else has to come first. That's not exactly how it's done. And certainly it's not how it's done in Camp Mosheva. Camp Mosheva, like I hope other summer camps are about, you're remembering that the center of your life and the makor of a chaim, your chaim, is Torah. That's what it is. And everything has to come from there. But I definitely think if you've all been privileged to spend a year or 2 years, and some of you more than 2 years, sitting in the walls of the Beit Midrash, and again, Alex, I want to say this, nothing here, nothing, no one, make any mistake, the Chana Spiegelman, the Rosh Moshevav, Camp Moshevav, Bnei Akiva's Camp, Indian Orchard, is saying Limud Torah is not essential. Limud Torah is essential. Essential. However, I think it can go hand in hand with providing good education and role models and fun and experience for young children, boys and girls who need you to be out there and be their leaders. So it means, that's true, life is all about juggling. And when you go to summer camp, it means you have to juggle a little bit. It means that sometimes your focus is with your campers and your chanichim and what you're doing. And then sometimes you have to make sure that you make the time to put aside and be kovei itim l'Torah. Now, that's how I feel.
I agree totally. I just think definitely in life, and along what we said before, when you give, you get. When you give, you get. And there's no question about it that, and with all the beautiful mashalim, and you can fill up a cup of water, or a cup of, the more you fill something, and eventually, as you fill something up, eventually, if it's full, you're going to be able to tip over, and you're going to hopefully then, so there's no question. Life, I think the cure is what Chana mentioned, is in terms of balance. I think in life, a person on the one hand is always trying to ask himself, how can I personally grow? And how can I personally, the more I grow and the better I am, the better I'm going to be able to give. There's no question about it. I don't think the two have to be mutually exclusive at all. I think very often, as you're doing both, and if you could set up a situation in a camp setting, or whatever situation you are, obviously you could have a ikar and a tafel in your life, and you could have, depending on what stage you're at and where you're at and what you're doing in a camp, if you're going, to be with kids. So yes, maybe that's your focus, and but obviously the two are so hand in hand. If they see you learning, the best type of learning, the best type of role model you could be, that's the Hebrew word, the word mashpia. Mashpia, oh, beautiful. Mashpia comes from the Hebrew word shipua. And what's amazing is, if people see you, you can learn Torah, beautiful. But if kids see you learning Torah, they're going to learn Torah. You could talk about davening, davening, but if you daven, that's a mashpia. That's going to have a trickle effect. If you're going to act, if you're a mensch, if you act like a human being, other people are going to see that. So yes, formal teaching, makoros, fantastic. So the two go hand in hand in a certain way, and it's not even so much a mutually, you have to know where you are. You have to, in your life, as you're developing your growth and what you're doing, you have to say, look at yourself. Am I developing? Do I have a way that I could also influence others? But I think the two, I don't think it has to be this choice.
Go ahead. All right, first of all, to go back to something I said earlier before Rav Gotch got here, those divergent implications of informal education. So he patted my suit jacket. When I heard the informal part of informal education, I took off my tie. I think when he heard the education part, he put on a shirt. So that was the.
That was lucky I'm wearing one right now. It's okay.
You hear informal education, you respond in different ways. I also do want to, with all the thank yous, register a complaint. Rabbi Yuden's book is significantly larger than mine, and I don't know what they're driving at with that. But okay, maybe when he's done with it, I'll borrow it. Figure that out also. I want to start by focusing on the latter part of the question, which reads, should they focus on giving back to their community? Anybody who answers that question in the negative really needs to examine, I think, the Torah that they're learning. How to give back, when to give back. There's room for divergent opinions. But should a person be overwhelmed with a sense of responsibility to give back to their community? I think the answer is unequivocally yes, and unfortunately in the Torah world we don't always sense and feel this enough. Rav Moshe Feinstein has a oft-quoted, very, very popular tshuva where he makes certain analogies between the mitzvah of tzedakah and how we allocate our financial resources, and the mitzvah of kiruv rechokim and education, by which he draws the conclusion that the same way that 10% of our money is meant to go to tzedakah, so 10% of our time should probably go to helping others. And I think it's important to carry through that analogy in some other ways also that are alluded to in the wording of this question. In tzedakah, there's a concept of aniyeh ircha kodem. There's a concept that those who we feel a stronger connection to and are members of our community, and it's not really for now to discuss this, but that's not at all obvious. If there's a glaring need on the other side of the globe, I might think that halachically my primary responsibility is help a Jew wherever he is, and of course it is to some extent. But Chazal, in their great wisdom, dictated aniyeh ircha kodem, that our own aniyim take precedence, and that goes in terms of klal work as well. Everybody in this room relates to a particular community. We come from a certain geographic community. We've attended certain camps and summer programs. We've gone to certain schools, and we are uniquely suited to make contributions with our Torah learning back to those places. And those, well, as I started with and I said before, that's where the best madrichim, the best madrichot, that's where the best mashpiyim come from, people who understand full well what happens. I think we have to be very, very careful. There is a notion, and Rav Gatch, he mentioned it briefly in terms of the famous idea of hashpah being the cup overflowing. And sometimes people say, well, you know, you'll learn and learn and learn, and then you'll give over. I hate to be cynical. Maybe I don't hate to be cynical, but I know I shouldn't be so cynical about it all the time. But there are far too many people in the world who are waiting, they're holding the puck, and there's never a shot on goal. They're amassing information, and they're never giving over. I strongly believe that guys who are coming out of yeshiva, even post Shana Aleph, certainly post Shana Bet, are fully capable, not just fully capable, are uniquely capable of giving over to their communities and to the guys who were in their shoes a mere few months ago, and that's an enormous responsibility. Whatever one decides, we need to be sensitive to that responsibility, which I would formulate in the context of Aniyah Yircha Kodem. I think there are two schools of thoughts for how a Ben Yeshiva should spend his time during Ben Azmanim. And they're both right. Everybody should consult with his Rebbe and deal with it in the way that makes the most sense to him. There are those who view Ben Hazmanim as the ultimate nisayon. It's the ultimate challenge and test to see whether the values of yeshiva can be sustained in as near and identical a fashion as possible. I have friends who went to yeshiva, and they viewed it as the challenge of a lifetime, whether they can learn 3 starim a day, even outside of the strict context of yeshiva life. That does work for some people, and if there are people in this room together with their Rebbeim who view that as the primary objective of a Ben Azmanim opportunity of what to do during the summer, then God bless them, and we look forward to their great contributions to the Jewish klal in the future. There is, of course, another equally legitimate school of thought that I would humbly suggest probably applies to the rove in this room, and that is to use Ben Azmanim to supplement, and certainly, as was said earlier, to apply so much of the learning, but I want to take a slightly different tack to supplement what we do, to gain those experiences that we do not get during the yeshiva time. Yeshivos, for all of their wonderful qualities, and nobody here is denying what the power of a year or 2 or 8 in yeshiva can bring to a person. Yeshivos are unbelievably selfish places. We think, and we should think, primarily about ourselves. We're focused on ourselves. The number one way to supplement that yeshiva education is by giving in as extreme and as a meaningful a way as possible. If we spend time immersed in our learning and we haven't had a chance to apply it, then it seems to me that many people, Ben Azmanim provides the perfect opportunity not just to apply, but to really to supplement what we've been doing the rest of the year and make sure that it works well in that one really great package like that. So again, you combine those two elements. Number one, at this age, we are uniquely suited. We relate particularly well to Aniyeh Irenu. For the people who need us the most, we might be the number one, not 5 years from now. 5 years from now, we'll play a different role in communal education, formal or informal. But right now, we play a particularly unique role that nobody else could play, that we're suited to play. And secondly, like I said, we have an opportunity to supplement. That should be Ben Azmanim. Whatever we do less of during the year, whatever we're not able to do in our Avodas Hashem during our time in yeshiva. So the summers and other Bein Hazmanim breaks may be the perfect opportunity to do that. We're not able to go on a tiyol every Sheni v'Chamishi when we're learning in yeshiva. We'll destroy our Siddharim. So during Pesach, during Sukkot, you're here in Israel, get out and see this beautiful land. Spend time in places that you can't get to and can't spend time in otherwise. Not just when it comes to this question about informal education. Supplement the things that we know are critical elements of our Avodas Hashem during the times when we have an opportunity to have a natural break, which very well may be a healthy break from the intensity of our Siddharim and our learning. And I think that has great implication to our choices about informal education as well.
Thank you very much. And if I can speak from Yeshivat Hakotel's perspective, I would summarize everything that was said and maybe add that the speaker spoke about the chiyuv and the importance of giving back. But they also spoke about, it's not just the chiyuv and important for the tzibur, it's important for you. It really shouldn't be a question, because the best way to continue growing is to learn who you are by being able to give it to other people, and seeing if you can give it to other people. Personal growth is not just the amount of information you amass. It's developing into the person who can make a difference with that information. That's part of personal growth. That's why we encourage everyone here in Yeshivat Hakotel to make sure over the summer to take advantage of that time to be someone who makes a difference in the lives of other people, and not to use the time for technical things that you'll have to bring Hashem time later in life to do. These programs are big examples of things you can be involved in. Okay, the next question is, in a similar vein, for those that choose to give back, how does one retain their values in an environment where not everyone shares the same values? What are some of the challenges? How can boys face them successfully?
I'll start on this side this time. First of all, I think the question was worded diplomatically in a politically correct way, but the way it's actually worded, how does one maintain their values in an environment where not everyone shares the same values? That's a great thing, to be in an environment where not everyone shares your values exactly in many ways. I assume that's just a polite way of saying that there are values that you feel are beneath you, in which case I have a different objection. Don't think that so much. We should be a lot less judgmental just in approaching the question. We should find ourselves being, like I said, a little bit more accommodating and a little bit less judgmental about different environments, and try to avoid holier than thou. We have to be smart, and there are environments that are dangerous. I understand the implications behind the question, and obviously we have to deal with them on a serious level, and I'll just make a couple of very, very brief comments about that. But there is something about the question that should ring somewhere in the back of our minds certain alarm bells with it. This is not an attitude that should be prevalent every time we go out for pizza, and every time we come back to our shuls, and every time we go back to our communities. I don't know if it's particularly healthy. I don't think it is at all healthy for us to believe that we are in a better place and be in that judgmental phase. So be careful about the question even before it gets any answers. When we are finding ourselves with the help of our friends and the help of our mentors, and we're in an environment that poses particular challenges, and we're dealing with a population that poses challenges, I just think one general guiding principle, which may in fact have great application to choices one makes for the summer or any other informal opportunities, is what I would call, using a sports analogy, the home team principle. Home field advantage matters a lot. You can and should and will be able to interact positively with virtually any segment of the population as long as you maintain home field advantage. As long as you're able to be the host, as long as you have a fair amount to say about dictating the terms of that interaction. To go into an environment where the decision-making and the overall context of the environment is not at all consistent with the values that you have, with the caveat that I mentioned before about how often we should make that judgment, but simply to go into a place where the overall environment is completely to a different standard to our liking, to swim upstream in our efforts to be mashpia, is setting ourselves up for failure. On the other hand, when we're in an environment where we can interact with people of all sorts of different mentalities, and we are working with that environment, we can accomplish a great deal, and there's a lot less to be concerned about. In other words, if it's Esha Torah during a Bein Hazmanim program, if it's a birthright group under a particular strong auspices, and we understand the direction, certainly any of the summer camps that are represented here and the wonderful movements that are represented here. So you can rest assured that you're in a good place. You're dealing with certain challenges, but within a context that's going to be helpful. Some people are overconfident in their ability to be mashpia. They go back to YU or any other type place, and they are they're burning with the desire to influence their friends and others, and they will visit their friends and spend time with their friends on their turf and in their environment in an effort to rescue them, to pull them out. First of all, rescue them and pull them out is a dirty word in my opinion, but second of all, you're not going to be successful. It doesn't work like that at all. You have them over to your place, you have them over to your base medrash. If that's not realistic, then a Shabbos meal or a restaurant, you get together on turf that you can determine kind of the context. You don't go to their environment and try to be mashpia than there. I think in general that is more dangerous than not, and not particularly great, not really great chances of being successful. So you want to maintain, like I said, that home field advantage.
Yes, I would just add that, in terms of there's a yachid and a tzibur, and I think that for sure, it's not, sometimes it takes a real gibor to stand up to what you believe in alone. But if you're part of a group, or if you're part of even if you're a minority within a group, but if you're in a situation where you have enough people, a chevra, and it could be 4 or 5 people, depending obviously on the informal setting. It could be in a camp setting. If you have a chevra where you're not going into this alone, and there are a number of people around you that are going to give you the support and they're going to give you so I think that's also, sometimes, it's one thing to do that and to really do it when you're alone. So I think part of the factor in terms of practically how could you face a challenge successfully, I think, obviously you set yourself up in such a way that if you have people that you could turn to, or if you're not just yourself doing it, you have enough of a support group amongst you, you could still be amongst people where they may not necessarily be where you're at, but if you have that support system, that's a practical way, and you're in an environment where you have that support system, it could be much easier for success. If you're by yourself, putting yourself in an environment thinking, wow, I was in Eretz Yisrael this year, and then, so that may be a little bit of maybe a practical way. Go with a group. Go with people that are going to give each other support.
Okay, first of all, I really appreciate, Rabbi Benovitz, that you explained the question the way you did, because I appreciated that a tremendous amount. There are always going to be challenges in people's lives. Always. There are always going to be things that are going to be stand in front of you, and you're going to say, can I do it? Will I be able to be successful if I try? So the first thing that I want to say is that I certainly agree with what both Rabbi Yudin and Rabbi Benovitz said. I think your home court advantage is really important. I think first, and in addition to that, I think it goes hand in hand. If you're in your home court advantage, then you also bring with you chevra. And those two things give you support on all ends. If you know what you're up against, and if you know where you're going to, you can also prepare yourselves. I think sometimes, especially in summer camp like mine in Moshava, you're always challenged with, okay, after being in yeshiva for a year or two, do you go back to a summer camp where there are boys and girls? And do you put yourself in a situation where you're not really able to learn? I would say, unless you're choosing to be in the Beit Midrash, you're not really able to learn starim bayom. You can't learn a Seder Boker, and you probably can't learn a Seder Tzoraim. You perhaps can get in a Seder Erev if you are very, 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 very determined. But what you can get in is Kriyat Itim LeTorah. Now, the challenges that are faced, certainly that I've been challenged with when talking to boys who want to come or are debating about whether or not to come to camp, there are so many different challenges. I think, again, if you look at it and you understand that what your goal is, if your goal is to come to a place like summer camp, like Camp Moshava, and you want to be there because you believe in the mission, you believe in the cause, you believe in the ideology, if you believe that your personal example is an example that is going to be beneficial, just who you are, what Rabbi Yudin said before, just be who you are, and that example is what anybody and every camper and every other staff member will see. And if that's your goal and that's your focus, then the truth is that you'll be able to deal with the challenges that come your way. I think one other thing that I don't remember which one of you said was that if you feel like the people that are running the program are in tune and they're tuned into what your needs are or what your challenges perhaps might be, then you also have people to talk to. And you're not in a vacuum, and you're not the only ones who are out there feeling the way that you do, or perhaps debating some of the issues that you might be debating. But in fact, if you feel confident that the people that are running the program, and I would hope that any program that you go to, you feel confident that the people that are running the program have a listening ear and that they are sensitive to the needs of the people that are there in their population, then I think that if you put yourselves in a home court advantage and you go with chevra and you understand what your goal is and what you're doing, then you can really rise to any challenge.
Okay, the next question is, as heads of programs, what are you looking for in the staff you've hired?
Natural start here in the middle.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so in a similar vein, you got to walk the walk, you got to talk the talk. You try people that are real. I don't know. I try to focus on kids and staff members. I don't know exactly which hat I'm hiring. I'm looking for this summer because I'm not really running a program this summer. Although I am, but that's none of your business. No, it's not official yet. I'm teasing you. Coffee base is informal, and I'm not even picking them. But let's go. I'll take off my other hat. So yeah, obviously in life, you're looking for a certain level of maturity. You're looking for, as Chana said so well, leading and having a discussion. Why? What's the reason? What's the real reason why the person who's going to be involved and coming to work and whatever, what's the real reason behind it? And obviously within an interview, within trying to do your research, the personality, is it someone obviously that's relatable, someone who is going to be Murav and Mabrio, someone that's going to be, and someone who's going to be that type of, role model, a dugma ishi of how they act in kids. If mostly we're talking about kids, it was mentioned before. Your ages, some people never grow up, that's fine. But what Rabbi Benovitz mentioned before, the power, the unbelievable opportunity that you have for kids that are just a few years younger than you. I know in my yeshiva just now, during it was winter break, we just had a bunch of alumni come back and was staying with us in yeshiva, and I'm sure it's similar here. But the hours, and we had we spent Shabbos together with the alumni and the boys last week in yeshiva. The closeness of your age and the ability for you guys, the way you can relate to kids and the way kids will look up to you, younger kids are going to look up to you as an unbelievably powerful tool. And if you're running a camp, and if you're running an informal Jewish educational program, and you have kids that younger, you have counselors or staff, the younger kids can relate to, they can look up to, that are cool, that are, for lack of a better term, that are normal, that are cool, that are just like, they just have it. And it's like, they're not like sitting, they live in it. And then you could be the most formal rabbi, it's not going to have the same impact as a kid and someone. And kids are really smart, and they're very insightful, and they can see through stuff. So if you're living it and it's something that you're passionate about, then you're gonna have a successful summer relating over to kids. If you're gonna, then I don't know if I want you working for me. That's all. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. There's 3 things I want to say. Dugma ishit, be passionate about what you believe in, and be fun. If you're a dugma ishit, everything, who you are, the mahut of who you are, the essence of who you are, that's what I want kids to see. I just want them to see that. If that's what they see, then I have the best staff in the whole world. That's it. If you practice what you preach, believe in what you do, that for me is the most important thing. I need you to be B'nai Torah. I just need people to believe that Torah is their life. That's what I want. That's what I want kids to see. I don't want to have to fight with staff about should they be wearing tzitzit, the boys, shouldn't they be wearing tzitzit? I don't want to do that. I just want people to come and be dugma ishit. That's it. I just want you to be a dugma ishit. I want you to believe in what you practice, what you preach, believe in it, and I want you to have fun. And if you're having fun with kids and you develop a relationship with them and a rapport with them and they trust you, then you can always take them from where they are and always move them forward. That's what I want in my staff.
There's no question the passion and being a role model is at the top of the list. You have to have something to give over in terms of your own consistency and having a little bit of a message to give, although, like I said, I would temper that somewhat. The only things I would add to it, and one of them was really said already, humility is very much at the top of the list of it has many applications. The way a person is going to interact ultimately with other staff members. Many of us are involved with programs that have many dozens of staff members, and it's not always going to be about you, and you're going to be taking instructions from people as well, and we're not always as humble as we should be. Humility is an amazingly important trait to bring in, to apply with and have on your resume, and what was mentioned about humor, about fun, I would label it as having a good sense of humor also. It's very important that we take ourselves seriously, and it's very important that we don't take ourselves that seriously. We should know that there's more going on, that we should know how to laugh, and we should know how to laugh at ourselves, and we should know to be in good spirits and good humor. A tortured soul is not going to be really great at influencing anybody, especially high school aged members of our community. So a sense of humor is very important. On a very practical level, experience matters a lot. I think in some of the more successful programs also, I don't have the luxury of taking people who are speculating on what they might be able to give over. Some of the more intense programs, some of the more established programs are really going to be looking for people who have done it. So again, if you're going to be in YU or Landers or secular university for 2-3 years and say, okay, now I'm ready to give over to the community, but I haven't spoken to a person in high school since I was in high school, it's going to be very hard for you to convince whoever you're interviewing that you are in fact qualified. Whereas all the other things in the world that you may or not have, but someone's going to give you a recommendation. I was in Camp Moshaval last summer, and my division head, my superior, says that I was a absolutely dynamite person who was able to influence others. I don't need to hear anything else. That's it. You're going to get in. You're going to have that opportunity to do it because that experience matters a lot. And the final point, which is really, in my mind, it's a little bit of a pet theory of mine even, but it's connected to the point about being oneself and being genuine. Don't be afraid to be a little bit different. Sometimes people think one of the worst and most incorrect fallacies about the application process, I can speak personally about the NCSY Hakotel, I strongly suspect with other programs too, is that there is a particular mold, there is a particular personality, there's a particular resume. This high school, and certainly this yeshiva, and this look is what makes you into a madrich on the NCSY Hakotel. Not only is that factually not true, but it's fundamentally and philosophically completely backwards. It's the exact opposite of what gets you in from behind the scenes without going into specifics. The last thing in the world we want to see when we're reviewing applications is another person who's exactly the same. This has always been true, and here comes my little pet theory. We know that there are many implications of the advances in technology and the like. I strongly believe that people, the high school guys and girls that we're trying to influence and trying to impact, are in a much different place in this particular area. I believe there is more diversity amongst our teens than ever before. It used to be that the cultural influences were much more common and basic. If you take guys' education, for example, I've received, for example, in the past 2 years, more calls about people saying about should I come on the NCSY Hakotel even if I hate sports than I received in the previous 19 years combined. Now that's either because, probably for two reasons, I don't know if they're mutually exclusive. It's either because we've broadened our appeal and people who never would have considered the program, the same number of people who always hated sports, guys in their teenage years, are now considering the program, and that's why I'm getting the calls. That's probably partially true. I think it's much more true because there are more people who are not fitting. The teens are not they're making their own entertainment choices, their own cultural choices. You're not defined by whatever CBS decides to air, and that's not the definition of what it means to be a guy in America. Now, there are all sorts of different ways that a person can express himself and different interests that you can have, and we don't need people who are exactly the same. We don't need everybody to have the same interests and to have the same strength. So be yourself, and be yourself doesn't just mean being genuine. That's for sure the most important, but don't be afraid to be a little bit different and bring something to the table that's going to impact on the high school guys and girls that we're trying to influence that themselves are very different and very diverse.
I think we may have answered this question already, but if anyone has anything they want to add, for those who will be working with Jewish youth this summer or in the future, what suggestions do you have for how to best impact them?
I think we covered that. No?
I said what I said about experience for sure. Now, find the time, and there's no contradiction. So, I mean, you have to try to thread the needle a little bit. We're all under a lot of pressure when we're trying to build up some of these, just make sure you have a message to give them also at the same time, though. Just work on yourselves and make sure you have some content, something to give over. You have to make sure to work on yourself at the same time. There's no question about it.
I think Hanukkah said we covered this one already, so.
Okay. This is an issue which I think is particularly relevant for all of us learning in Eretz Yisrael and for all the people on the panel who were born in Chutzlaretz and have made Aliyah. So, an issue which often arises for many yeshiva graduates is that they see living in Israel as an ideal, but they feel that they can have a greater impact in Chutzlaretz. What would you recommend to someone facing this dilemma?
Okay. In life, sometimes people say you can't have your cake and eat it. I love my cake, and I love to eat it. And what's unbelievable in life, and I'll tell you, with the way the world is today, and it's a good question. But at the same time, I don't know. I'll give you an example. We made Aliyah now close to 7 years ago. And when we first came here, so my wife and I, we came here with all different ages of our children. And what's incredible, and Bezrat Hashem Ken Yirbu, are opportunities in Israel to work with American kids. Checkmate. You want to work with American kids? My son went to a high school called YTA. I taught in the girls' YTA. There are American kids that are coming to Israel right now who need hashpah. You can have the best of both worlds. Obviously, again, meaning if it's a time of your life that you need to be in Chutz La'aretz, beautiful. I would never ever judge. I didn't come till I was 40 to Israel, and it was definitely what to be done in America. But what I'm finding now, and as more and more families, Baruch Hashem, make Aliyah, and talk about summer camps that have opened up here for quote-unquote, for English-speaking people, for who could use the hashpah. So on a certain level, that complexity, you could even, it's not so much black and white Israeli kids are in Israel. There are, thank God, a lot of American, programs and kids you can address here. So that's, again, the question is a little bit less, on some level practical. But yeah, I'm a big believer that obviously you have Rabbeim, you have people that guide you, and there are people that are talk to you and direct you and where to go. But in this field of Kiruv and reaching out to people, so yeah, you got to do obviously what's best for you and your family and your life and respect from your family and where you are. But what's beautiful about the world that you live in today, which may have been, is that I think you have the opportunity to do both. And so many opportunities are opening for you to be able to do both.
I kind of feel like, Rabbi Benefits, how long you live in Israel?
10 and a half years.
Okay, so wow, slam dunk. I live in Israel 23 years. I have raised my family in Israel. I've been involved in education, Israeli education, literally since I got off the plane. And so that's my perspective. I'm coming from that place, okay? I want to say I have many very talented, incredible, wonderful Jewish educators who are living in Chutz La'aretz today, who I really hope that one day they're going to wake up and they're going to realize that wonderful youth here in Israel need these fabulous, incredible, amazing educators here as well. So sometimes you're faced with that big dilemma, oh, but if I stay in Chutz La'aretz, there's so much that needs to be done for the Jewish people there. Well, I don't know, guys. I'm a big believer that the future of the Jewish people is here and not there. That's how I feel. I know that that might put some of you off, and I apologize for that, but that's really how I feel. I feel like we can always get stuck. We're going to get stuck in America, and Jews get stuck in America, and they've gotten stuck all over the world throughout history, thinking that I need to stay here now. That's what I need to do. I need to stay here now because I need to. So it's true. There are definitely educators that should stay. But if everybody takes a turn, then everybody will do their time and then come. But I think that the future, if we all believe that the future of the Jewish people is here, and educating Jewish youth, whether they're Anglo-Jewish youth or Israeli Jewish youth, just youth, and educating here is where the future of the Jewish people is, then that really needs to be the answer. Again, katonti badavar. These, I came when I was young. I was at the beginning of my married life. That's what I did. And I've grown up and I've raised my children here. The myth, I think, that exists is that people think that if you come to Israel, right, there's no real educational challenges for your kids here. Well, there are plenty of them. And we need plenty of fabulous, amazing, incredible educators and leaders here in Israel. And there are things that people like yourselves bring from where you're coming from, how you were raised, the schools that you went to, the communities that you live in, that when you come here and you live here, and you either decide that you're going to try to really learn Ivrit and you're going to immerse yourselves in going into the Israeli spectrum, or you're going to continue with the more Anglo or Chutznik spectrum. There's so much work to be done here. I really hope that after spending a year or 2 or 3 here in Yeshivat Hakotel or in Israel in general, that you're going to go back at the end of your year or 2 or 3 here and you're going to say, my time is limited in Chutz La'aretz, very, very limited. And I think that if you say that to yourselves, you're not going to find yourselves in that dilemma, I hope. And if you do find yourselves in that dilemma, then remember, there's much to be done here. We're a small country, we're just starting out, we're 65 years old. We need people like yourselves to come here and put down your roots here and educate and be part of the society and help educate our children and help be leaders of the Jewish people in the future here. That's what I have to say.
Yes, beautiful. There's no question. If you take the question from the perspective of impact, I think it's been answered emphatically and beautifully. There is great impact both for the many, many Jews who are already living here and for the greater global Jewish community. Great impact that can be had here. I do think there is one cautionary note that it would be irresponsible if we didn't mention it. If by impact you mean opportunities, if by impact you mean professional opportunities, career opportunities, one does have to be realistic. I don't know in a person, again, it's a very, very personal question you need to consult with your Rebbeim and your families about for sure, but I don't know if a life of less professional opportunity, and the opportunities are not always equal, despite the fact that there is a need for great educators over here, but the professional opportunities aren't always the same. And therefore, one has to be realistic about those professional opportunities. I don't know if the opportunities are radically different. If one is not going to be able to give you an example, there are many community rabbanim. Since that structure hardly exists in Israel, it's developing slowly, but many community rabbanim who are struggling to find the same opportunities in their aliyah that they had in America. Now, many of them have come and had a very, very successful aliyah nevertheless. Some have struggled a little bit more. Some have returned back to the States. It's not an easy question to answer, but it's a fair question to ask. I think we can agree to at least recognize that there are certain challenges in all fields, including klal work, including Jewish education. So there's no question there is an impact to be had in Israel, but the opportunities are not always the same, and I think we do need to be realistic. The operative word, and I think this was alluded to in the beautiful answers that you heard already, I think the operative word a lot of times, though, is ideal, particularly when we are dealing with young population. Sometimes we lose sight of presenting the ideal. We've heard in a lot of the questions already, in a lot of discussions, we live in a world that necessitates certain compromises on a regular basis. And sometimes that spirit and dominating influence of compromise, it controls our chinuch in a way that I don't think is healthy. At a certain point, as mechanchim, as educators, as people of influence, we need to present the ideal as much as possible. And one of the major flaws, at least is the way I see it, one of the major flaws in the chinuch and the education that's going on in North America is a lack of presentation of Eretz Yisrael as that ideal. And as long as people aren't coming and actually taking part in life in Eretz Yisrael, then none of our students will get that message conclusively. So yes, is it possible, again, if all opportunities, all career opportunities are equal, is it possible that we will have a greater sphere of influence in the short run in the United States? As was mentioned before, it's not as likely as you might think, but I guess it's possible. But the impact of demonstrating what the ideal is, not enough of our students, not enough of our families, not enough of our communities really believe and really take in the notion that living in Eretz Yisrael is the ideal. They might give lip service to it, but they don't really believe it until they see their neighbor pick up and leave. There's nothing like that moving van. There's nothing like that actual sacrifice that involves to make a person stop and think, where do we belong? So there's an impact, and again, I think we don't do it often enough on all levels of education. Since we, by necessity, have to speak in a language of compromise, we sometimes forget to present to people the ideal. And youth is when ideal resonates the most. Young people love to articulate and love to identify with the ideal. They're the most receptive audience because they are not yet influenced by this language of compromise as much as older people are. So again, especially when we're dealing with impacting on the youth, let's articulate and demonstrate an ideal as much as possible. It's a very, very healthy way to be mechanic.
Just one thought. Many of you met Columbus over Shabbat. He left a very, very strong community. And the Baal had said to him, "You're leaving, coming to Eretz Yisrael." And he said, "Actually, I'm not leaving, I'm actually leaving."
Leading. Right.
I'll mention also on another personal note, I think it's legitimate for a person to live in Chutz La'aretz because they want to impact. I don't think it's legitimate. But I think coming to Israel is about a person having the desire to live their life, as Ben said, in an ideal way, and that being a priority in the way that the rest matters less. When my wife and I were discussing it, neither of us knew what we would accomplish here. But I felt that living in Israel, and she felt that living in Israel was important enough that we would do whatever it was to succeed. Whatever it took, whatever job it was. And I sincerely believe that if a person does that, Shem Shemayim, and they show willingness to follow Hashem where they think Hashem wants them, Hashem will make sure that a person ends up in the place that He wants them. And that's what we should really care about. So even though it's legitimate to live somewhere else, if you feel that your place is in Eretz Yisrael, you should be there. Be willing to do what it takes, and Mir Hashem, find yourself in the place you belong. Okay, if one is thinking about pursuing a career in formal Jewish education, what should one be focusing on during the college years?
Can I start?
Sure.
I think that the best thing that you can do for yourselves is immerse yourselves in activities and things that will help you find that balance between your academics and all the other things that you have to do in school that you need to do, and you need to be involved in working in informal education. It can be a variety of different things. It can be in youth movements like NCSY and B'nai Akiva. It can be teaching on the informal level in schools. It could be working in groups in your local shuls. It can be doing anything that will give you the opportunity to interact and stay connected on an informal level.
Yeah, I think we said a lot of it already. That's 100% correct. You have to learn a lot and you have to gain some experiences, and it's possible to do both. We're busy in college. There are a lot of other things going on. Make sure you are continuing. If you leave yeshiva and enter into the greater world, and that means the end of your own personal growth and the end of your own learning, you will not be a successful mashpia in any type of setting, whether it's formal or informal. So you have to commit yourself to continuing your growth and learning, to have something to give over. and you have to make sure that you pursue opportunities that are there all over the place. It could be learning with a local high school on a Friday morning. It can be, of course, in the B'nai Akiva and NCSY Shabbos opportunities that present themselves. These organizations can be very, very accommodating to guys who are committing themselves and girls who are committing themselves to higher learning while they're in college. That's what these organizations are looking for. So they'll be accommodating to an extent, of course, but be accommodating to schedules and to making that balance happen. Make sure that you're continuing your growth and that you're pursuing opportunities to gain the experience of interacting with high school guys and girls.
Ditto.
Yes.
For those not choosing education as a profession, what things can one do in their own communities to still contribute?
What things can't you do in your own community to contribute? This is, again, it's a complete fallacy and myth that there's any sort of limit to what you could accomplish if you're not in formal education. One of the great benefits, and I think we've outlined a few of them, of informal education, its level of accessibility to people, that they're less intimidated and less turned out. The entry requirements to getting into formal education in school and a shiur in a class. You didn't understand the shiur, then you're failing in school. Informal education has no such barriers. That's, of course, one great element. We've spoken at great length about the fact that the limitless type of impact of role modeling and the real world type of situations that people find themselves in that are on display in informal education are so much greater. But this is another great thing. Informal education is by definition informal. It's not confined to a classroom. So some of the greatest people of impact in informal education are outside of the framework of formal educators. They're not formal educators on their downtime. They're people who are really able to do this. Every shul, every organization, every school would love involvement from Balabatim and from lay leaders, and needless to say, they are the greatest role models in the world. If you live in Eretz Yisrael, the impact my students have when they go to a place for Shabbos, you could accomplish more in one Shabbos than you can accomplish in 3-4 weeks in yeshiva. Just seeing people who are going to work, who are living their lives, and who are believing in what they're doing, it's an amazing experience. And of course, the same thing is true in America as well. It is there's no limit to how you can impact on people, even if you're not going the route of a formal educator. No limit at all.
You know, I'm just going back to where I am currently. I'm proud in the yeshiva where I. At Ashreinu, where we learn now, there are 4 or 5, I would call Rabbeim, who are not Rabbeim, all by profession. They are, one's a lawyer, got 2 lawyers, I got a head of a hedge fund that are giving shiurim to my boys. And again, Rabbeim have a major impact on their life. There's no question about it. But I don't have to tell you, if you see somebody who has an equal passion to Torah, as much as they've been successful in their business life or whatever, that makes a roshem. That's somebody who's like, wow, that's a person who's been able to navigate. So there's no question about it. If you're in informal education, that's the field you're going into. But as Rabbi Benovitz said so beautifully, you could sometimes you can even be more of mashpia if you're a person who lives it and is a dugma ishit and is a role model to people. Dafka, if you're not with the title, or dafka, you have the opportunity to make that much more of an impact. So I think that's very true.
The only thing I want to add is that I think availability is really important. I said it, I think that if some of you are going to go back to your schools and your colleges and you're going to be on that track of looking for something outside of the education or informal education maslul, then some of the things can be such simple little things. Like Rabbi Benefits had said, there's not one single high school in North America that wouldn't be happy to have somebody who called up the principal and said, you know what, I have an hour a week available. Do you have a student who's struggling in Limudei Kodesh or struggling even in math? Something like that. You can be a big brother, a big brother to somebody, a little kid whose parents are working around the clock, 24 hours, and they just need somebody to play basketball with him once a week for a half hour. That impact is something that will benefit you. One of us, or Rabbi Tarragon, mentioned giving. The more you give, the more you get. That's true in life. So when you're like deciding what career path to take, obviously the best career path to take is something that you feel great about and passionate about. whatever you do. But I think it's important for your own neshama to always feel like you're available a little teeny bit to be giving of yourselves to other people. And it can be, even if it's the elderly in your community who needs somebody to help him walk to shul or somebody to help them go to the grocery store and pick some. Those are such simple things that I don't think we always think about. And I think that they're so...
Just talk to them.
Right, I think it's just critical. I just want to tell you, in Israel now, there's this whole new mahalach. There's a whole new program that's being set up in the Misrad HaChinuch. They decided, Misrad HaChinuch, one of the really great things that they've done, that the Nitzulei Shoah, the Holocaust survivors, they're dying out. And they couldn't even comprehend the fact that high school boys and girls would go through high school here, were probably down their block, really down their block, or in their neighborhood is somebody that they probably looked at 5 million times, maybe said hello, maybe not, never once really worried enough or was concerned enough to take interest in them. And Misrad HaChinuch decided that it can't be that we're raising Jewish youth today and we're not going to give them the opportunities to interact and to hear these people. So what they've done is they've made it even a mandatory kind of thing that when you get to Kita Yud Aleph, you get to 11th grade, you have to go and meet these people for no other reason, just to talk to them, to hear their story, to befriend them. Now, I have students who have done it, and they were so afraid to do it. What am I going to say? How? And they end up being mesmerized, and they fill the time of somebody who's just elderly. Probably nobody comes to visit them, like you said, Rabbi Yudin, just to knock on their door and say hello. Any of those things are things, guys, that you can do anytime. Make yourself available. Don't just think about what you need and what's good for you. I think that you said it before, Rabbi Benovitz, you talked about anava. If a person has anava and they go in with humility, you can always find some more time, 10 minutes, a half hour, an hour of your time in your very busy schedules. We all have busy schedules to give of yourselves. So no matter what you're studying in school and no matter what your profession will be, and people can do it b'tzura kol kach tznu'ah, in such a modest way that nobody needs to know about it. It's just for yourselves and for your neshama.
We have to have our bit now. I want to thank the panelists for coming, and I want to end with something Mrs. Spielman just said, which is that no matter who you are, if you're selfless and you're willing to give of your time for other people, you can make a big difference. And that's really what the 3 people here have done today. And the reason they're here is because their hope is that they'll inspire you just a little bit more and help you understand a little bit more how you can be the people who will sit up on the next panel. I think that's what's critical. When you look from a window in into people doing big, great things and assume that you can't be such people and you're just gazing at them, all the forums and all the panels are irrelevant. The goal of the Yeshivat Hakotel Leadership Program is to get you to see the leaders you can become. And I assume that they would agree that if this panel helps you become that a little bit more, it's all worthwhile. So in Yom Hashem, we look forward to this inspiring you to become the leaders you can be, and thank you again for joining us.
Thank you. You were great.
Thank you so much. Josh, of course, for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
He's starting, of course, to be the
Your name was Bruff, it'd be perfect.
Woo!